I am Fortuna, and I bring with me the wand of abundant life. The wand of abundant life scintillates. The radiation of this great staff which I carry, like ancient fables of magic, is the means whereby each individual can come to realize that he is a focus of abundance. Did not the Master say long ago, "I am come that ye might have life, and that more abundantly"? Well, beloved hearts, understand then that the desire of God is to bring forth the power to draw abundant life forth right where you are, each focus of the Godhead. Each individual, whether imprisoned in consciousness or not, has within himself the glorious potential of immortal life. He need not be in a state of worldly desire, for the desires of God are possible unto him. These laws, taught by our ancient brotherhood, enabled the masters throughout time immemorial to say these words: "All power in heaven and earth is given unto me." Will you understand tonight the meaning of that phrase? Will you understand tonight the indomitable power within the concentrative mind that understands the will of the Godhead for each individual? Whensoever your desire, beloved ones, is an illicit desire, one that harms other parts of life, by the great act of cosmic mercy, life often withdraws, and your energy is lessened, and you notice an abatement of your energy simply because the desire itself, if it were to be granted, would create unhappiness, pain, shame, and disgrace upon the very powers of life itself. Yet individuals force their will through, and thus create a ring of negative karma, which returns to them ultimately for redemption. But we are concerned tonight with the dissemination of that cosmic knowledge, whereby individuals will understand the power of God that frees them, so that they are able to take for all time immemorial their own God freedom, and to understand that they are the authority for their world, that they can, if they will, demand from their own mighty I Am presence the fullness of that law which bringeth forth abundance in consciousness. You have in the Latin language the word fortunate. And how fortunate are those who understand the meaning of the word. The appellation Fortuna, given unto me, was actually given that I might become a focus of the abundant life at inner levels, retaining for all humanity who will accept it the power of their own God investment in cosmic energy. When men then call unto me, and I answer, it is truly God who answers through me, for we are all servants of him, in the ascended realm as well as below. And the quicker men will understand this great law of cosmic adventure, the quicker the whole vanguard of humanity will move forward into the abundant sense of the abundant life. Qualify your life then with abundance, but let it understand the need to draw forth kindness, love, and understanding. Shatter those concepts that inflict wounds and injury upon other parts of life, or even upon yourselves, by a masochistic tendency, and recognize how man can, if he will, enter into a state of true, crystal clear mind, where the mind of Christ that draweth forth this abundant sense is aware of its unity with the Father, and out of this awareness is born joy. For the joy in creating freedom and abundance is the joy of fulfillment, whereby cosmic energy flooding forth through interstellar space and between the spaces of the electrons within your physical form, or within your expansive consciousness, truly is able to draw forth awareness of God and the high ideals which he has implanted in man through the ritual drama of mankind's understanding of the Christ consciousness. Won't you understand then that just as there exists today a universal Christ and a spirit of Antichrist, so there also exists many in the world today who are actually fraudulently representing the law. For example, I speak to you today of my own fraudulent representative. Not my own in the sense that I claim her, but my own in the sense that she claims to be me. I refer to that individual known as Lady Luck. In the gambling casinos of Monte Carlo and Las Vegas and other parts of the world, this individual is superstitiously regarded as an existent being. I assure you that this counterfeit of my own God-given originality is truly one who will lure men as the sirens of old to the rocks of gambling and dissipation, fulfilling nothing in reality, but only more bondage and karma. Those who recognize that the abundance of God is no gamble for humanity, but the outpicturing of the perfection of cosmic law, will understand then once and for all that I am the authority for that high adventure which humanity may claim, that high adventure of mankind manifesting the abundant life, a life that never lacks, for individuals are able to draw forth and magnetize to themselves that sweet mystery of cosmic abundance that is locked within the heart of God and reserved as the treasures of heaven for every man, woman, and child upon the planetary body. I call to your attention then this night, O ye men and women of this world who deplore the situations of the world. You deplore the situations of violence whereby thieves seek to steal by night. You deplore the situations of violence whereby nations rise against nations and kingdoms against kingdoms. Then will you understand with me this one word, that the love of money is the root of all evil? As the scripture is called to your attention this eve, understand that all in the world that is darkness, all that is violent, wars between nations and peoples, and all darkness that works wickedness in the streets of life, is the result of man's greed and selfishness and failure to understand the abundant life. Would you change the world then this night? Do it by cosmic law and the expansion of the teaching of the abundant life. For man can, if he will, claim what he will and manifest it simply because it is a divine action, if he will only understand the need to seek first the kingdom of heaven and God's righteousness, and then all these things shall be added unto him. Men seek instead of rightly, they seek wrongly, and by their wrong seeking, the human ego holds sway over men, exalting them above one another and creating more and more return of the cyclic law. The wonders of the coming age that your hearts yearn for, O children of men, the wonders of the coming kingdom of heaven that you long to see manifest upon this planet, can and will come about, a golden age of transmutative wonder, when the abundance of God is the divine sense in every man, when every man is able to enshrine and enthrone the divine sense of his own abundance, when he can forsake the sense even that his karma is bringing back to his doorstep some strange lack which he feels that he deserves. For this in itself, beloved hearts, kills the divine sense of abundance. This shuts off and dams up the flow so that man cannot receive it. In order to participate in the ritual of cosmic abundance, then let the forte of God's love flow through you. Do not select any individual upon the planet as the victim of your evil intent. Let all be recipients according to cosmic law. But take note, and this is the great error of human beings, who are constantly being drawn into a sympathetic state whereby sorrow and pity for other individuals who are actually receiving what they have sent out, other individuals, by their sympathy, are drawn into the orbit of sympathy and cut off their own supply. Do you understand this, beloved hearts of light? Leave all matters to the cosmic law. And when you let the sense of abundant living flow through your being, let it be a divine sense, as though God himself were releasing it through you to all humanity. Do not qualify it by a stoppage toward any individual. Life will do that if you will leave it to God, if you will leave it to those higher minds, such as the karmic board. Then understand, beloved hearts of light, all will be qualified according to cosmic expectations. But when individuals, in the sense of error, enter into a consciousness of qualifying life that is in no way a part of themselves, directly they find that that evil which that individual was intended to have returned to him may return to them, because by their standing in the way, all manner of undesirable happenings may occur. I tell you this tonight out of great love for you, for there are some amongst you who have called and called and called unto heaven, and somehow or other you have wondered why the answer was not forthcoming. Well, beloved hearts of light, the answer was always forthcoming. The answer was forthcoming because the call compels the answer. But you see, it never was able to come forth into your world because you yourself did not understand all of the interaction of cosmic law. Well, beloved hearts of light, the mind of a little child is really the mind that you need. For by the sophistication of man's own ideas, he often thwarts and aborts all of the intent of the living God for him. If, like a little child, he will reach his hands up to the Son of God, holding his hands out to the light and say, O eternal Father, give me the abundant sense. Open my mind and consciousness, my heart and being, to all that is the joy of God, the joy of heaven's intent, the immortal mind, and the light that cannot fail. Then God will remove the the blindness from your eyes, and the gentle golden radiance from the skies will pour forth majestically, crowning all with light, sundering all that's dark, and making all things bright. A ray of hope in you will born, the joy of God will flood the whole wide world that very morn, with radiance like a dove, new hope and joy and peace to all. The kingdom of the living God will come into the mind of man by cosmic rod he brought. The golden rule law, the law of abundance is within you. The joy, the beauty and perfection of the Spirit, the cornucopia of the cosmic sense is within you. By your own acts, O mankind, you have closed the door. But by your own acts you can open it once again. Heaven stands with you. We stand with you tonight and every day, waiting the knock that you will make upon the authority of life, the authority of your own God presence, the authority of the very energy of God that beats your heart, the authority that Saint Germain has so often given to you, the authority of the living Christ that Jesus 2,000 years ago did direct into the consciousness of his disciples and apostles. Won't you receive today this secure sense of knowing that by the very act of offering yourselves unto him, of gently lifting the fullness of your garments into the light and saying, O Father, wash me with the effulgence of thy light, thy white light, thy golden light, all of the flames of God. Then the scintillating magic wand I bring will become a tangible reality to you, and you will discover, blessed ones, that you have the self-same authority which I do. For that authority is locked within the heart of your own mighty I Am presence. That authority is within you. It was planted there and blessed by the Holy Spirit from the foundation of your own world, and it will successfully fend off all negatives, all darkness, and all unfortunate states of being, if you will only pin your faith upon that solid, transmutative energy of your own divine presence, and recognize that a shower of infinite cosmic golden substance from the heart of God on wings of harmony and song may find its way, first of all, into the domain of your own consciousness and being, and then ultimately out into the great, larger arena of the world, where it will implant the indomitable attitude of cosmic Christ victory into the minds of man. And thus the world no longer in lack, no longer in greed, but recognizing that it is tethered to the divine steed of the Holy Spirit, will rise, and the civilizations of the world will no longer clamor for all of the good that each one holds in the treasuries of their own national boundaries, but all things will become a common availability to man. The ability of man to reach forth into that glorious sense of abundance of the Holy Spirit. Let those who will say that I am not a real being. Let those who will dare to imagine or breathe the blasphemy of the denial of the God within themselves. I assure you that the fires of the sun are in this magic wand I bring, and the power of God to create billions of stars is within this magic wand you hold in your own consciousness. Will you then, emboldened by this reality and thrust for cosmic truth, understand once and for all that the kingdom of heaven that is within you, the indomitable wisdom, wise dominion of God within you, reaches out into the world to lift the awful pall of the crucifixion of man upon the cross of matter and shame, and brings forth instead in his name the holy sense of the Holy Spirit, the God direction, the use of the flame and flames that frees man forever from the boundaries and densities of his own sordid imaginings, to be able to soar and free the world from the bondage and dregs of their own darkness and their own shame, which fashions today a glitter across the face of the land that is a barrenness that truly in time will bring to humanity the self-same ashes that occurred long ago upon the nations from Vesuvius. I say to you then, let us instead reach up to the great cosmic light that flows from above and determine this night that God's love shall inundate the world with the divine and abundant sense, that none shall feel a sense of lack, because they hold the authority of this magic wand of cosmic truth, the ability to reach out. It is only a matter of time. And who are you that stand today and say, I have called 10 years and been unanswered? I tell you that if you understood the law thoroughly and had the faith of a grain of mustard seed, you could speak this night, and truly as the golden coin appeared within the fish's mouth, so the divine sense would appear in your mind and heart, and you would be the recipients of all the good that God has in store for each one of you. You need not lack. You need not lack the abundant sense, for the abundant sense is the open sesame which draws forth our radiance. The fires of the sun have spoken in my mouth this night. They are the fires of the sun within yourselves. They are the fires of the sun within the universe. Out of them have come forth the great gifts of beauty to humanity. All that is wonderful to behold is the result of the intellect of the living God. Not human intellect, but the intelling radiance, the intelling fragrance of the sacred fire. Oh, hear my word. Oh, understand the power that is within you, for thus shall the fabric of the world's garment be lifted out of the mud. Thus shall we stop the awful clash and clamor that today almost causes the world to go down. Instead, we shall prepare the way for the coming of the Lord. We shall prepare the way for the divine sense to be born in every child that takes breath, so that each little child, from its earliest moment of nativity, shall be born with the Christ consciousness, the abundant sense firmly ensconced in that one, a domain of usefulness, a domain of fragrance, a domain of preparation for the kingdom of heaven that is within you. I shower upon you this night the radiance of the holy fires of God. Our God, that is a consuming fire, is also a God of love. Fortunate are you if in beholding this starry radiance you also behold your own face created in the divine image. Our joy be upon you. Be up and doing. Be about your Father's business. Pursue the eternal pathway. By the fires of the sun, change the earth into an abundant world, that it follow not the path of Maldek, but the path of the great central sun. marvelous is the concept that man can at last perceive the reality of God, the reality of finding favor with God. To be highly favored of God is the lot of all who can accept this concept. For the conception is an immaculate one that belongs to everyone. For he who framed the worlds has not disparaged of bringing peace to the centuries, to the millenniums, even to the minutiae of the second. And so, even the tick of a clock can be endowed with the concept of immortality. For immortality swallows up all things into its vastness. And man findeth favor with God. And the moment that this favor comes to his consciousness, the moment that awareness that he is breaking the bread of life is his own thought, because he has made it so. That moment does he realize the truth that has always been so, that he, man, is also a creator. Man is a creator of destiny, even as God is. The works of his mind and of his heart, when tethered to the darkness of the double standard, the double eye vision, produce many harms and much pain. But when the divine concept that man has found favor with God is truly realized, man begins the outworking of the wondrous spiritual nature of God into the appearance world. And the veil of the appearance world no longer becomes the dense enfoldment of his consciousness by all of the mortal dregs that result in pain and suffering and even shame. For shame is a state to the mind and consciousness which ought to be wiped away as tears from the eyes. And truly, God shall wipe away all tears from the eyes of mankind, and establish that Christ reality which is a veritable fountain of hope to the world, the fountain of hope that radiates the light of the world to mankind, the fountain whose crystal stream, by reason of its purification and of its purity, radiates to man the purity of God, the purity of creative purpose. When creative purpose is perceived, when it trembles as the truth and reality of God upon the shaft of the mind, descending into form, it produces that miracle, or the miracles, that mankind now sometimes vainly hope for. For faith is the substance of that which is not seen as yet. And man should recognize his role in calling forth faith from the very heart of God. Faith to do the necessary tasks in this day, when the light of hope seems to have burned out in so many individuals. When the fears of uncertainty are come upon mankind. For the sins of the world are truly gross, and becoming grosser each day. Perfect love that casts out all fear dwells within man. But man, by reason of his sense of solitude from his fellow men and from his God, making him feel even alone in a multitude, separates him from the great realization of the oneness of the garment of God, the seamless robe my Son wore. Let all who can conceive now of the seamless robe as a garment of light that humanity may wear today, but one day, if they are to end their turmoil and the return of vicious karma they have sent out, must also universally wear. Within each individual, there is posited by angelic hands and the fire of the certainty of the sacred Son of God, the awareness that I am is the name of God. That in the concept of beingness, in the concept of universal awareness, man may come, if he wills it so, to that wondrous place where the eyes behold the universal Christ as the Spirit of living truth and high adventure, seeking to step through the veil in every man, to convert and change every man into the glowing fires of the spiritual sun. The words, "Our God is a consuming fire," were majestically inscribed upon a tiny necklace which my Son wore upon his neck. Written in the Hebrew tongue and treasured highly, it was lost and never found by man again the night when he was captured and betrayed. But I tell you, the eternality of God by this day, from the memories and treasure of my heart, bringing forth that sacred memory, that you may share this moment, that moment with me. For the words are true, and the power and principle of light and fire are as one. But so many see all around them the evidences of eternal spheres and know it not, for their consciousness is of a metal which, brittle and shining, produces only glitter and small reflection of reality. Open the eyes of your consciousness. Open the doors of reality to yourself and become strong upon the rock of God. For the foundations ought not to be moved. They ought to stand firm in each individual, carrying him from glory unto glory each day. And men ought not to permit their consciousness to go downward into despair, even to the pits of despair, and then mightily rise as an arrow into the air. Instead, they ought to maintain and seek to maintain that constancy of the total man that always knows that he is upon the spiral road, rising higher and higher into the universal ethers. Deriving from this high adventure of cosmic progress the realization that the purposes of God are being worked out in his own life, that ultimately all that is not of the goal and the shining end will fall from his grasp and be no more. Instead, he will joyously leap as a young child leaps forward in a green and golden meadow to pluck the flowers from the grass that allure him most because they are products of the sun, the earth, and the rain. He perceives in these mortal blossoms the realization of immortal hopes not yet realized. And so in the lives of all individuals upon the planet, there remain many unrealized hopes. But the hope that has most often been dashed to pieces in the world is the hope of the living God, that humanity, putting away their toys, their ploys, their darkness, and even their human joys, will realize at last that there is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof is death, and then linger no more upon those strands of darkness and shadow, but instead move ahead to the crowning Christ-victorious victory of each life, a triumph of God adventure, a divine triumph made possible in the cathedral of each man's mind, where God is enshrined, where hope lives on as a perpetual flame upon an altar to the living God and the principle of immortal life. Life is worthy when men make it worthy. Life is worthy as the world draws nigh to the high adventure the world in reality seeks, but knoweth not where to find. They are imbued, unfortunately, from time to time with a sense of boredom, with a sense of purposeless drift. Let them come instead to that point they have missed in their evolution, in the law of cycles. Let them come instead to the pathway where they can, holding the hand of God as a little child, recognize that maturity is being born within them, even in their younger years. And one day, as they attain the pathway of cosmic mastery, each one may find that blessed fulfillment which we also found in the angelic salutation, "Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee, and with thy spirit." I pondered much upon this salutation, and in the days since its fulfillment, in part, I have also perceived the glorious illumination of God shining forth in the cathedral of my being and mind, a hope that never remains blind, but always opens consciousness door to see, to perceive, and in the perception to be, not a bruised reed or broken flax, but a strand of hope, a rope leading upward to the light and the glory and the fire of true cosmic desire. A God is born in man, for man was born a God. And now, as I stretch forth over you all this day, the rod of Aaron, the rod of cosmic truth, the rod of hope, no bruised reed, but the strongest seed, the seed of God, perfection. I say, let this vine be a vine, the true vine of immortal life, and let the great joy bells ring out over the earth as an eternal Easter in the fall. For whereas man has descended into all manner of darkness and destructivity and karmic meanderings, the light of God has not gone out. The hope of God is not extinguished. There is before all the flaming power of victory transcendent. The victory of my Son may be shared by everyone. Remember this, for I speak as a mother of hearts who gathereth her children, that they may give homage and honor to the purposes of the immortal Son, the universal Christ. Shared by all, the giant pall, darkening humanity's consciousness, lifts, and in its place, the pure perfection of eternity shines, not as a vagrant mist, but a golden mist of scintillating hope. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Let this be in you. Let this seed dwell in you. Let these words sink down into your hearts. For so do you honor his purpose, and you honor my purpose as well. And above all, we bow our knees gratefully toward the living God, the Spirit that has created the sweet vale of earth as a place where man may shed his tears and fears, and then come at last, with the passing of the years, into the eternal day star from on high, that has visited man in the past and visits him now. Let those who have an ear to hear what the Spirit has to say. For the Spirit of the living God still speaks, and the veil stands still, rent in twain. The doorway, the gateway, the shining path to the universal Holy of Holies is before each one, and each one determines the progress they shall make by the very actions they do take. I pledge you my love. I pledge you my hope. I pledge you my faith. Will you give me yours also, that hope may exchange with hope, and upon the rising ladder of cosmic glory we may stand together, mother, son, daughter, all one, in the Christ consciousness, the face of God, reflected light of the immortal presence. Peace be upon you. Ascended Lady Master Magda. The universe twinkles with myriad lights, gleaming from all parts thereof, radiant stars of hope, majestically confronting man and teaching him that the way out of darkness is the way of the light. How beautiful is the ritual of the ascension. The ascended consciousness, cognizant of forgiveness, of the tenderness of God's memory, reflected in fruit and flower, in memory of the grass that was, and the immortalization of that which is of worth. We reach the ascended state, gazing upon the twinkling lights emanating from the planetary body, little shaft-like rays of hope, reminiscent of the Master's gaze, of his eyes, of the tenderness of his thoughts. Our consciousness fills at last with the supreme virtue of the chalice of God. God is, and I am. Awareness of tenderness and beauty in natural manifestation. Our souls soar, no more to be entangled in mortal grief, suffering, or a lack of abundance. Our souls going home. Do not presume to find God, but do. One with the Spirit, everlasting hope is born in our hearts as a flame kindled by a momentum of agelessness, of immortality. Our love for Him who both conceived us and in each Christ-like manifestation forgives us, is the tone of a great bell, making all aware at last of the diligent momentums of the universal mind of God. Coming home, we find at last reunion with all hearts, and through the ritual of everlasting forgiveness and everlasting hope, we find at last the return of the Christ consciousness in all of its blazing noontide fullness. Rabboni. We see Him. We feel Him. We are one with Him. In an everlasting manner, all of our relationships change to those of permanence, of everlasting hope, of a heart that is never stilled, of an eye that never dims, of a being that is one, everlastingly one with the universe. No more then involved in illusion and its shroud, we grasp at last the hands of the living Christ. He is risen with healing in His wings. We perceive a new fashion, a new glow, a new hope upon the mountains. The summit of man's identity becomes forever his goal. Let the goal recede or rise ever higher. The pulsations of cosmic delight will produce the flutter of new hopes within, unending, and travail no more. For at last all men will perceive the new culture of the ages that is born in the cultivation of the living, universal Christ consciousness. How beautiful it is in heart and consciousness to wipe his blessed feet with one's own hair. And the words, "Thou art forgiven," echoing in the corridors of memory, still at last all mortal anguish, and all anguish of mind or heart. For hope is eternal, and will never perish. The magnification of the delights of the ever-new world flood the mind and being of man. Stars of hope bursting before their gaze recreate the old days, the elder days of art, when beauty unmarred stood before the consciousness, and at last men were able to communicate that beauty to one another. And in the teaching of the very young, those young of heart and young of being, freshly come forth unsullied from the mind of God, the newness of life was communicated to them from those who had passed through what men have called the vale of tears. For God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. And the Lamb of God is the light of this city, a city foursquare, a city based upon the geometric progression and perfection of the living God, a city where all toil is the perfect being of the living God within the consciousness of the individual. Do you realize and grasp the meaning of that? God is not sitting in a citadel of history, as Nero of old, fiddling while Rome burned. God instead is majestically communicating, radiating, emanating through the person of each little star, each little being, each focus of manifestation, more of himself, of his grace, of his reality, and folding all seek in oneness to progressively rise into the arms of forgiveness and hope. The radiant violet fire of perfection comes to mind and heart, cleansing, purifying, vitalizing, and life, like a budding rose, opes its petals one by one, corollaries to the Son of Being, and the perfection of God is known to human hearts. I come to you this day by a special dispensation of the brotherhood. I am Magdalena of old, known as the Lady Master, Magda. I reveal myself to the world. For the fountain of forgiveness from the heart of God, of all the darkness and confusion and chaos spread abroad in the world, is a requisite of this day, the day of the magnification of deity, of being, of the I Am presence within. Let all then share in the glowing firmament of hope. Darkness must vanish, shadows must go. The climate of perfection all must know. Truth and pure reason infuse the soul. God makes known to each man his goal. Do you see how the perfection of thousands of years can be brought into the individual and focused right there today? A soul memory so exquisite, like a beauteous cameo, it may be worn upon the heart of both ladies and men, for it is an inner adornment, an adornment of consciousness that casts out all fear, for fear has torment, and God brings freedom from torment and confusion. He brings peace to the world and the knowledge that I am free. For in my freedom from the densities that plagued me of old, in the forgiveness of the Christ manifest in Jesus, comes also the forgiveness and love of one another, not only of those who are brethren, but of those who are temporarily cast out and separated from the light and dawning of truth. Truth and freedom go hand in hand, blessed ones. And I know, for I have traveled the long road of travail, and I have seen both darkness and light. I have seen both hope and hopelessness. I have stood at the door of the tomb. And I assure you that in the spirit of the resurrection, hope and joy, the abundance of life flows to every man. What is the meaning of true love but a grasp of this principle? The principle that lies undistorted in the hand of God. The principle that lies undistorted in the mind of God. The principle that lies undistorted in the heart of God. A heart of hope, a heart of renewal, a heart of consecration, a heart of more than ordinary dedication. As many hands, many hearts, and many lives lay themselves upon the altar of being, the magnificent spiritual resurrection, which can and does take place, will bring to all a certain knowing that God hoped for them from the beginning. And in the bestowing of his hope upon their heart is the first flowing of renewal. A renewal as ancient as the fires of life that created unborn worlds. And today is the voice of God echoing through time and space and eternity. For when man understands and grasps this principle of life, he recognizes that all knowledge and certitude is within the heart of his divine presence. He is a focus, a glowing focus of cosmic fire, regenerate and charged with all beauty and perfection. All beauty and perfection will manifest, and the knowledge of the resurrection flame will kindle in him anew a permanent hope. O hearts of light, be led by grace. Be led by grace. Follow grace. memoriam. A strong wind bloweth from the east upon the waters and upon the dry land. Let men then grasp the principle of understanding. The waters that must be dried up are the waters of world emotionalism. Men must grasp the principle of the sun and its radiance, shedding light upon the old earth and upon the new. For at the cusp of transformation, many hearts fail for fear of those things which are coming upon the earth. The darkness vanisheth, the light shineth unto a more perfect day. The dawn of the coming of the seraphim, the dawn of the coming of the cosmic ones is at hand. The lute of heaven plays more sweetly to those who hear. But as the light becomes brighter in the consciousness of the righteous, shining as the sun upon the earth, rising with healing in their wings, so do those born from darkness garner greater darkness. And the extinction of the old earth draweth nigh. For we clearly see a new heaven and a new earth in the consciousness of man. The dawn that cometh is a dawn of fire. And in the coming of the fire of God upon the earth, the hearts of men will at last respond to the vibratory action of our sphere. Those who have trampled upon the light instead shall trample upon darkness. The seed of the Christ within them shall triumph over darkness and shame. And the earth shall seek in a more meaningful sense that pride, that honor, that truth which resolves each crisis in the light and crucible of Christ reality. Individualized garments are brought forth. Men seek to wear them. Those who cannot but put them off momentarily will hope with all their heart to once again wear them. For the garments of the Lord are no stranger to the soul. From the time of the beginning until the bringing forth into physical form, men wore garments of the Spirit. Now, individuals have forsaken in many cases the triumph and destiny of their real self. They have looked to outer conditions, and the apple of delight that appeared before them has proven to be one filled with ashes. Whited sepulchres, brilliant on the outside, but filled within with dead men's bones, the historical scene clearly revealing to all who have the power of observation that only in the presence of true beauty and spiritual things are to be found things of worth. For the net of delusion that seeks to capture hearts and minds, I might add, continues in the world to disturb, to affright, and to destroy the peace that the living Christ would bring forth in the hearts of men. In 2,000 years, the lesson has become a decadent one, for the many have gone the broad road leading to destruction, not perceiving the fruit of the Spirit as love, joy, peace, and righteousness in the Holy Spirit, but instead supposing in the dullness of their mind and wit that human concepts can successfully lead them to the promised land. What promised land is this, where hate grows daily? What promised land is this, where political confusion and economic disaster faces the people of the world? What promised land is this, where the educational systems of the world have become, as some of you have said, up for grabs, that by grabbing the power of education, men are able to distort in the eyes of the world and the world children all the historical facts and potential of man's emergence from an age of darkness into an age of light. And what of all this? Will it produce the kingdom of heaven? Will it produce the fruit of the millennium? I think not. The disasters men have feared are coming upon them because their hearts are heavy, because they do not understand that to throw off this heaviness is not to trample upon their fellow men, but to produce instead dependence upon God, upon the Spirit that gave them birth. For out of the Spirit and the power of the Spirit, as out of the east with a strong wind, cometh the fires whereby humanity shall be transmuted and at last emerge into that new kingdom of a new heaven and a new earth, righteousness in mind and spirit, and the fruit thereof. We come. Is our coming noticed? Perhaps by the few. When the many grasp the fruit of their own coming into reality, then shall the world be bright. We extol virtue emerging by chrysalis from the fount of the Holy Christ self, fruiting from within, radiating out new passions and fires to the mind and soul, because a God is born within the domain of each man. Realization of his own Christ reality brings to him the fiery determination whereby he shall topple the whole monstrous creation of darkness into a whole that never more shall be. For the bottomless pit of man's misshapen identities shall indeed exist momentarily, so that men may cast away their unwanted conditions, and in its place will come the pillar of fire, the identity of every man as the inner witness, transmuting and refining and purifying even the outer man, until at last each man, master of himself, conceives of the oneness of God, for he conceives of the oneness of himself. No longer plagued by various identities seeking to occupy the platform of his own, the individual emerges at last one with God, and the electric virtue, the spark of cosmic magnificence, whereby when the soul is born to the consciousness of the individual, the true vision of God reality is seen at last. Once it is seen, it is more easily followed. For when the pillar of fire appears to the consciousness of each man, leading him across the wilderness of deceit and confusion, whereon lie the bleached bones of those who have failed in the quest, men recognize at last that they themselves have failed in the past to realize what today lies before them. And so, as they move onward, they seek to place upon the wall of their consciousness the icon of true recognition of the Spirit, to realize that the densification of substance is not the deification thereof, to recognize at last that upon the wall of consciousness must appear the first vision of a new heaven and a new earth, and that men and women today must be up and doing about their Father's business. The mastery of the Christ demonstrated 2,000 years ago by beloved Jesus is today a banner of the Lord. In the temple of individual being, it beckons and arises the energies of every individual, awakening and quickening him at last to the view of his divine mission, a sense that he came purposefully forth to do the will of God, to perceive the will of God, to deify the will of God by his action, and to be the will of God in his manifestation. Individuals do not perceive that in the manifestation of themselves, they oftentimes, through their own human will, do not recognize that there is a battle going on upon the battleground of self, whereby the selfish whims of men seek to overthrow the divine intent that lies within them. And if it lies within them, it postulates a dormancy whereby there is no quickening, and so men become indeed the quick and the dead. Quickened because the majesty of God is called into action and recognized, dead because they have allowed it to be cast down and trampled upon by the vintage of their own carnal desires. Now comes the virtue of cosmic judgment to each man, the judgment that each day appears, the judgment whereby he can determine to allay his fears of the hope of a better resurrection, of a better state, because of obedience to the law, the will of God. Hence, he casts aside those delusions that have allowed him to trample upon his God identity, and instead he chooses and elects by cosmic decree, by a firmness of mind, to give virtue her reign. And behold, the sun of virtue riseth with a burning heat, and man passes over the first deserts of selfhood, a dark night of the soul, an obscurity of desire, where he cannot even recognize that he himself will ever achieve his God identity. For this identity which he has for so many aeons of time seemingly, although it may be only a few thousand years, he has not courted, but instead he has hidden from. Now it is the turn of the God identity of every man to play hide and seek with him. For once started upon the path, he often finds that he does not always achieve the coolness of the virtue of the Spirit, but rather a burning condition whereby he himself begins to ponder as to whether or not he doeth the will of God or even his own will. And in this seeming extinction of being, at last there is born, through the whiteness of the Spirit and the refining fires, a process whereby man achieves immortality. And in the seraphic concept, man perceives that the fires themselves of the Spirit will achieve the coolness of the waters, the refreshing waters of life that he has longed for, that his soul has longed for, and he perceives the burning era to be only a period or bridge of cosmic desire whereby he can be purified, transmuted, and raised into awareness of the life of God. It is a transitionary period, a period of seeming obscurity, and then at last the true identity of the man emerges, and he finds instead of an empty nothingness that he has achieved at last the recognition of the will of God, and in the triumph of that will is sealed his own overcoming victory, a victory that need not escape from any who respect the law. For the law cometh with the sun, the law cometh with the wind, the law cometh with the Spirit. the law cometh, and the law is the law of life. Now let us rejoice. Let the cup of our consciousness proceed. The victory at last, the triumph at last, the finale is the victory of immortality, the victory of the foreverness of God. And as man reviews from a more lofty position in retrospect the accomplishments of the past ages, he will perceive each lesson delineated in letters of fire before his consciousness, and then cast them away into the casket of self-keeping, to be brought forth whenever he is in contact with those who have not yet entered the domain of overcoming, to draw forth the wisdom and the lessons and the patience and the tolerance and the perfection that God-like brings to the ascended beings of the court of heaven, the understanding grace whereby the mercy of God is dispensed to the ages. I am Moria of the Avesta. I am Moria of the light. I am Moria of the heart of the will of God. It is my wish to see the fruit of the Spirit flourish upon the earth and bring new hope to the multitudes. For the present crisis must pass and be replaced by the victory of the new heaven and the new earth, for which men await, even as we wait. Peace be upon you. Out of the light I have come, in the name of the living Christ, in the name of Saint Germain, in the name of the Spirit of the great White Brotherhood. A triumphant band moving ever toward new victory. Will you become one in spirit with the purity of our purpose, the freedom of every man, the triumph of every God design, the peace flowing fragrantly into the soul, renewing, perfecting, and reviewing the ageless concepts of the unknown God become known. Lo, I am with you always. out of the depths of his love, he has raised us up and made us to stand in the holy place where God is. Let now the heart, in its winged state, reach out into the universe and understand the meaning of true love. In my contact with the Master Jesus, the greatest and most magnificent facet of his divine nature was the nature of his love. His love flooded forth from his heart and could be felt. It seemed the closer I came to his physical body, the greater I was immersed in the sense of love. And so I often leaned upon him, and they said of me that I loved him greatly. In truth, it was his love that drew me to him as a magnet from the very heart of God. Today the world seems scarcely to remember the genuine love of God. They seem scarcely to know the depth or even the surface of his great love. They seem to have forgotten the glow of his reality present in all nature. For with the stretching forth of the green shoots in spring comes to those who have eyes to see and ears to hear an inner awareness of the nearness of God. And in the blue of the sky and the mellow gold of the sun's falling rays upon the heads and hearts of men, there is much to be said of the offering of love. For the flowers of his heart are the ever-present reality and joy he brings and seeks to bring to the children of men. But the world often has ears for other things and other desires, and do not understand that their great longevity, their permanence, their immortality will consist of those things that belong to our realm, a realm of illumination, a realm of perfection, a realm of true science, a realm of the living God. For of old the worlds were framed by his love, and the completeness of his love is to be found in the sinews of nature, and his love is to be found in the formation of the very physical body of man. The light of the eye is great when it attunes itself with those frequencies that behold God. Some think to behold God means to behold him only in the macrocosm, only in the face of the saints. Let me say unto you that those who behold God in others draw him nigh unto others. For as we behold God in humanity and perceive the beauty that God has placed in the world, perceive the strength that God is in the world, and realize that humanity have maligned him by their concepts of iniquity and of pain and of darkness and of those tones that are not of the light. Now come we into a fuller memory, a fuller remembrance of him, the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. He it is who dwelled in the Arats of old. Before Abraham was, I am. In the consciousness of God from the beginning, this love dwelled bodily. in man who sought to perceive him. For those who are hungry shall be filled, and those who are thirsty shall be given to drink. And the waters of life flow freely in the world community when the eternal truths are perceived, the basis of all scientific development, the basis of all perfectionment in man, the reality and the power of reality to those who wait upon it. And I see as a mist, far in the distant east, the light appears, luminescent, radiating, and in its embryonic beginning to the heart of the world. Now from the heart of the mother of the world comes the dawn of purpose, into vision, almost apocalyptic, into the consciousness of men, those who wait upon the Word of God, those who understand that He liveth still, that He is not dead, that He has not removed Himself from proximity to those who seek Him, that the power of His healing wings has risen over the earth, a radiant and glowing fire, symbol of cosmic hope and reality, that men need not fear for those things that are coming upon the earth, for the things that come upon the earth will purge the hearts of some, just as they will frighten others. But the design is all to bring humanity into greater awareness of the need to bow their knees to the principle of being, the radiance of being, the I am principle that appeared long ago to Moses in the burning bush. For God spoke out of that bush, saying, I am that I am. And those who understand this, Om Tat Sat, I am that I am, understand the love of God, that all things are purposed in His domain to the moving of the soul into prominence, that the living soul within man may be tethered to its own Christ reality, and by proximity and the principle of absorption, draw magnetically from his heart the seeds of light and purpose, whereby they can at last formulate within the consciousness of their own heart and domain a reality that never can be taken from them, for it liveth in them, even as it lives in me today and lives in humanity, who will open blinded eyes and open the continents of the air and open the ears to the waves of light and vibratory purposes that are not afar off, but are as close as each individual will permit them to come, drawing all men at last into that fold of oneness of which Jesus spake, saying, there is but one sheepfold and one shepherd. Those who know the voice of God, those who understand His purposes, the depth of His sincerity and His reality, or are willing to be taught, they shall be drawn first. And then at last we shall go also to those afar off, and we shall kindle in them a flame, and we shall quicken in them a purpose, and we shall see that the stones may indeed cry out. These were the words, in essence, that our Master taught us. These are the words upon which we rely today. The one word by which all things were created, the one purpose for which all things were ordained. Those willing then to allow this love to permeate their being will become magnets of soul purpose, reaching out into the community of the world. They will stir the world as never before to awareness of the flame from the east that cometh like lightning into the world. For the joy of God is a cup that all may drink of. The joy of His love can saturate the world and show the healing power of his virtue, that all lameness be healed, and all blindness be healed, and all deafness, and all dumbness. And in its place come the awareness of the might of the Lord God that liveth. For he who liveth and draweth nigh is the essence of love, and his love I bring to you, in my words, in my thought, in my ideals. And I have said unto the angels who came with me, make known unto these people that the love of God liveth today. Make known unto them as a trumpeting over waves and land, that the vibratory action of the Lord God is at hand. Let them feel and know and be the radiant power their eyes can see. For as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. For every eye shall see him. Let all be like him. In remembrance of him, and in remembrance of the greatest heritage of humanity, I, John, say unto you, the greatest of love is with you now. Be with the greatest love, the love of God. Peace be unto you. I speak of the eternal light that shines from behind the veil, the timeless light whose radiance can be apprehended by all, whose sincerity of purpose parallels the sincerity of the eternal God. Throughout the ages, men have been satisfied with lesser aims, content often to dwell in the consciousness and vagaries of humanity. We are concerned today that those who follow the spiritual path of cosmic service, ministering to mankind and exalting the Christ in all, should realize and understand the focalization within themselves of the eternal light shining through the veil. This light is not related to the present moment, but is related to all times of the past and all times of the future. For the light is eternal. Therefore, those who contact the eternal light of purpose within themselves may understand the restorative means whereby the consciousness of mankind can be raised up, resurrected, and freshened for all those things that are coming upon the earth, those trials of test in service, those trials of test for the life of the individual, based upon the acceptance of the worth of the Christ by each individual. For the Christ is either esteemed or denied before men. Those who esteem the Christ will accept the light of that purpose. Those who deny him before men deny him by their acts, which speak louder by far than the words that they might also utter of praise, saying, Lord, Lord. Now we are concerned with virtue. We are concerned with striving. We are concerned with universality. We are concerned with the acceptance of the lives of men dedicated to the eternal God. For in the acceptance of the eternal God is the acceptance of eternal life. Those who accept only the passing passions of this world and the fashion thereof will find themselves completely out of context with the cosmic law. For the law is clear, and the law has been stated often. But the law of love is our concern. The law of love that reaches through the veil and draws the requirements of energy forth for the service of men, for the service of their soul, that the fruit that they bear may become the fruit of immortality. We would not then take over the lives of men, but offer them that sovereign free will, relating it to the will of God and the hopeful acceptance of the challenges that come unto them. For those things that come unto the individual in test come also to the world. They come to all men, but often go unrecognized. The law comes in many guises, but the performance of the law is the victory of man. The amazing victory that comes about because men believe. Those who truly believe will also live. For life is either an illusion to men, an illusion as relating to the unknown God, or a God of whom they are not certain, or else to the reality of heaven itself that is within them. In this noontide reality of cosmic truth is to be found the sense of overcoming and victory, whereby the great prize of God comes into manifestation as a living flame. And when this flame galvanizes the hearts of men into action, it will be a thrusting off of the old man and a putting on of the new. And in this expansion of cosmic virtue, changes will occur in the lives of men as well as in their thoughts. And by the fashion of their thoughts, they will purge themselves of all that is unclean, that ought to be sacrificed upon the altar of living truth. And by this virtue that is from within them, they will honor the living Christ and stand at the gateway of immortality in cosmic expectancy, that they may receive those virtuous strengths which are the portion of every man who understands that with the law comes the strength whereby individuals can overcome all outer decrepitude and states of human misery. I tell you, human misery can be overcome, darkness can be overcome, and a sense of fear and oppression, and the valedictory concept whereby individuals, recognizing that God is on their side because they are upon His, feel that no sense of failure can ever enter their consciousness, but only that emergent sense whereby individuals rise above the mass consciousness and to the level of assurance, that blessed assurance whereby the true faith of the saints is developed in the consciousness of contemporary man. For those who overcome today must do so by the self-same efforts that lived in past times, and the eternal light assisting them then shineth today to a more perfect goal and domain, whereby new life is infused into those who in a sense of inner tranquility call upon the purposes of God as living within them to manifest the dominant position of life within them that will assure them that for all time and time immemorial they will be victors over all outer circumstance and receivers of the law, the living law of God written within their hearts and minds and partaken of by them as a nectar of reality. The reality of God is not far from each man. It is connected with him according to the domain of purpose. The reality of God is strong, and the reality of God is that organic condition whereby the individual overcomes all his mortal ills, his mental ills, and his spiritual problems. They are all co-related. Will you understand this and identify then the factors involving your own life as clearly a matter of deficiency? A deficiency in Christ, whereby each individual garnering more of the flaming beauty of God through his beloved Son will at last triumph over death and all other manifestations less than the perfecting radiance of the living God. Thereby shall our brotherhood be satisfied, as we see all sheep of his pasturing coming at last into a state whereby they can accept the ministration of the living God and the divine sonship of each one, bond and free, male and female, Jew and Greek, that all should at last come to that supreme sense in the law, whereby the triumph of the living Christ in them is establishing for all time that God is all and is in all. Thus shall the brotherhood fruade at last upon the earth that respect for cosmic purpose, which is regenerative, restorative, recuperative, and sufficient to supply all needs of every man. In this sense, we urge that men shall understand that not only are they designed by God to receive the offerings of God upon the altar of their being, but to also offer themselves a living sacrifice unto God to serve many beings as we do. We are of the brotherhood divine. We are of the great white brotherhood. The great white brotherhood, through the arms of cosmic service, infuses all with a newness of life. Will you receive it? Then do so.